Okay, the tradition in my family growing up is that we always had Thanksgiving dinner next door at my grandma and grandpa's home. And great big feast, and we just loved to go there. But after the dinner and the dishes were done, we all sat around this great big square table, and I don't know how many decks of pit they had, but pit was the game that we played over and over and over. You could hear them everywhere. So that was really fun. But I think one of our traditions from early on has been to go camping, which we absolutely love. And as a result, our children's love it and miss it when they can't go. And then our camping started out with tents and sleeping bags, and has gone forward to tent trailers and now to a big trailer. But we absolutely love to go up in the mountains and be there and enjoy the scenery, the feelings, the closeness to our Heavenly Father there.
I think Christmas is a tradition we've enjoyed too. We play we don't play, but for years with our little ones, we would have our own little donkey, and we'd have our own little pageant that we would put on and read the scriptures and share the stories.
Nativity scene.
Yeah, which was nice. And for a while we did 12 days of Christmas. That was fun. When the kids were home. We haven't done it since, but when the children were all here, we used to identify a family we'd like to share something with, and so we'd go for those 12 days of Christmas.
And let the kids do the dropping off and run,
Yeah.
which is so fun.
Yeah, they enjoyed that.
Are there any particularly memorable family Christmases?
Yeah, I had one when I was younger. My grandfather gave me a hammer. Now, you have to understand, Sean, when we were young, and like I said, we were trying to work our way out of the Depression. My father, when he was 47 years old, was rushed to the hospital for a series of surgeries that terminated his good health for many, many years. But we went without a lot of things, but at Christmas we always got one little gift that we tended to treasure. And I don't know where that little red handle hammer ever ended up, but it was really something. The problem is with a youngster like me, you give a kid a hammer and everything starts to look like a nail, you know. So, but that was a fun Christmas. My grandfather also gave me a knife scabbard that he made. It was for a pocket knife, just like the one I wear now. Except it was leather. He was a leather worker. He was known all over the country for every military man, everybody that went to the war, the Second World War. My grandfather made a scabbard and made a knife and sent it to him, every single one. So he was known for his leather work. I have one piece that he gave my father. That's the only piece that I have now that he made. But he made his own tools, leather working tools. And that's the way it was in those days. You know, we enjoyed giving more gifts to our kids than we ever would have thought of receiving. But it was, you know, we get one or two gifts and that was it for Christmas. And it was wonderful. So, as I said in the very beginning, Sean, I wouldn't change a thing. I wouldn't change a thing.
For me, I loved the fresh Christmas tree brought into our home. And I would lay under it and just enjoy the smell and the aroma of it. And my grandpa Harding lived next door. And so we'd be decorating the tree and he'd come up and he'd just throw the icicles on. And we had to have them just very, very straight. But he would wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and come up to our home to watch us kids open our presents. And our socks then, stockings, were just a little tiny anklet, about, and then they would be filled with little pieces of chocolate and nuts, peanuts and stuff, and that was how it was then, It wasn't great big things like they do today, so. Anyway, we had wonderful Christmases together.
What about a family camp out? Any memories stick out?
Well, one. Tom wanted to take a friend. Was it his friend that got hurt? Was it Tom?
Jared, yeah.
And they were going to chop some kindling for us, so we had a fire. And this kid had to have he must have been trying to aim the hatchet, because he came clunk and hit himself right in the center of the forehead.
Well, then inside the trailer, they were taking the tabletop off to take the metal leg out. It was either Tom or his friend. They went up like this and got their head cut. Let's see, and there's the time when we were camped at Cabo Rest, and Val had to come home from California, I think. I'm not quite sure how it worked out.
Yeah.
Anyway, she drove the truck up to be with us, and she drove all through the camp, and we thought, oh, she'll come back. We didn't run out and say, here we are, here we are. We thought, oh, she'd recognize us, and she didn't. So she just drove in and out, and then she didn't come back. And we started worrying, and we had to go find her, and she'd driven down some road that was taking her forever. We finally located her, but that was scary. And then maybe it was that same camp where we had all of our kids there, and another family had all of their kids there, and they were all about the same ages, and we brought out a long jump rope, and that was the thing for that camp. Everybody had so much fun with, the parents turning the jump ropes and the kids jump roping over and over and over. That was a fun time for everybody.
Yeah. One time I had Charles and Jacob with me. They wanted to go for a hike, and we'd gone up to Bald Mountain and then hiked back on the west side of it. There's a cluster of lakes down in there, and they wanted to go see those lakes, so we hiked to the lakes. It's about a 3-mile hike is all. But when it came time to go home, it's all uphill. You got to go back up to Bald Mountain. And so I asked the boys, I said, I think what I'll do is I'll just cut across. I said, camp is just over here. I'll just cut across, go across country. And Charles and Jacob wanted to go with me because they didn't want to hike uphill. And those poor little kids got so scared. I couldn't believe, I didn't try to scare them, but there was no trail to follow. And there was, we just go through meadows and trees and everything, and they got worried. They thought for sure we were lost. And I kept assuring them that I knew where it was. We'd be all right. But boy, the poor little devils, they were so scared by the time we got to camp. It was unbelievable. Came out right on camp, perfectly, but they didn't have any, well, I think they'd trust me now, but they wouldn't. They weren't sure they were ever going to see Mom and Dad again. They were just little kids, but it was a fun experience. We've had so many, Sean. We camp every year. Every time we can, we go. It's just, there's something about being in the mountains together that brings us closer together. We just love being there. And the little walks that we take every day are just fulfilling.
And the food, and the tinfoil dinners, and the Dutch oven cooking.
Yeah. I had one experience, I don't know, I'll try to be very fast with it. When we were in California, I was the bishop there. Those kids had never been on a hired venture. They're venture-aged kids. They had never even heard of anything like what we did up here, you know, when taking these week-long trips back in the Uintas and whatnot, and basically surviving to eat fish. But I talked to them when we got there, and oh, they got so excited. So excited. They wanted to do it. So we brought a group of them up, all that could. We couldn't go camping, you know, because they didn't have the equipment for that. But we put them in homes. The Explorer Scouts that I worked with in Hunter, you know, they took them in and their families, and so they had a place to be and whatnot for a day or two and 3. Anyway, we spent one day hiking. We went up to Mirror Lake and hiked into Wyman, Wilder, and Packard Lakes. It's about a 3-mile hike. Beautiful, absolutely breathtaking. It's beautiful stuff. But coming out, one of the boys hung behind so far, and the rest thought that he was in the group. They didn't miss him, and he got lost up there. The trail followed pretty much the elevation and went into a deep draw and down and then came back on the other side. Well, he saw the guys on the other side, but there's this deep draw between. And so he was just loafing around, you know, wasn't in a hurry. And he thought, well, I'll just go down and go up the other side. But what he didn't know was that trail turned when it got to the top, went back the other direction. And he got down in that draw, a lot of deadfall, a lot of problems, and he just couldn't determine which way to go. He was totally lost. And finally he decided, well, somebody had told him that if you get lost in the mountain, you go downhill. Eventually you'll come out somewhere. But he'd never been in the Uintas. They don't work that way. And that mountain range runs east and west, the only one in the country that does. And so he was headed off, and I was so worried. What can I say? His dad was one that provided transportation for us up there, and so I don't think I ever worried more than I did at that point in time. I'd never lost one before. I'd never had one get lost. I used to growl at them all the time, tell them if they lagged behind, I was going to leave them there for the bears. And that'd give him enough incentive to stay up with us, but he didn't. And it was about 10 o'clock at night when the truck pulled into the parking area at the Mirror Lake Lodge, and out he jumps. You know, he'd worked his way all the way down to a lumber camp, and the guys that brought him back to Mirror Lake were laughing. They said, if he had continued on that journey, he'd have been there for a month. You know, he'd never get out because there's nothing there, just wilderness forever. And but fortunately, he stumbled onto that forest camp, or that logging camp, and told him that we were at Mirror Lake, so they brought him back. But talk about gratitude. I didn't know what I would do. Honestly, I'd already notified the sheriff, notified, you know, that we had a boy that was lost and we needed to organize some kind of search and rescue thing, but we didn't know when it would happen. It was night by then, you know, and we hadn't heard anything from him. We didn't know what was going on, so that was scary. That's the closest I ever lost or came to losing one.